So I was initially going to ask you for your thoughts and the state police thoughts on the legislation that Representative Snyder and I had written with regard to inventorying state-owned assets for the further deployment of broadband. We know that you have transitioned to a new radio system, that some of your towers are no longer needed. Actually, a fairly good number of towers have been identified no longer necessary for emergency service providers. And we know that access to high-speed internet is a public safety issue for both the public who are trying to contact 911 services, EMS services, as well as for state police in assuring this public safety in an emergency situation. So in Representative Snyder and my bipartisan, bicameral work on this issue, we have been concerned with assuring that emergency services and public safety needs are met. So we felt that that was a good place to start with regard to deployment to underserved and unserved areas. And so I guess now, in light of the testimony that Secretary Topper has provided, hoping that you could share with us the conversations and the input that you had in this process, because we are concerned about public safety and our emergency responders.
Senator, first and foremost, thank you for your appreciation of what the state police and our first responders do across the Commonwealth. For the benefit of this committee, the Pennsylvania State Police are in the process of deploying a P25 radio system across the Commonwealth. We are approximately, this project began in earnest in 2018. Thus far, we're deployed across 41 counties across the Commonwealth. The P25 radio system is a non-proprietary radio system, which will allow the Pennsylvania State Police to communicate with other law enforcement agencies and other first responder agencies who, unlike our current system, which is the 800 megahertz open sky system, which is a proprietary system. We expect that this project will complete, if we stay on schedule, and we fully expect to do so, by June of 2021, at which point that the former or the current Open Sky 800 megahertz system will be decommissioned. The Open Sky 800 radio system consists of approximately 1,100 towers. The 1,100 towers vary in different configurations. There are approximately 350 to 400 some odd what we refer to as microcell towers. Microcell tower is nothing more than a phone pole with an antenna mounted on top of it. And they were deployed across the Commonwealth to improve this radio system's capability so that our troopers would have adequate radio coverage in very rural areas. Many of these microcells are in areas that are not even accessible by electricity. They have their own power source, an alternative power source. They have a propane generator or something of that nature to ensure that power remains supplied to that facility. We hope to decommission those once we fully deploy the P25 radio system, and in doing so, those current assets that are part of that system will be relinquished over to DGS for decommissioning. And I'm not sure, Senator, if that answers your question.
So you have had conversations with DGS in regard to this contract, and how have the existing assets that you're retaining for the use of the state police been treated under this contract that has been negotiated?
The new P25 system will typically require about 125 towers. So you can see that there's a significant reduction in the number of assets that would be necessary to keep the system operational, albeit some of those towers are much more substantial than the current towers. Some of the towers that are part of the current 800 megahertz system, the Open Sky system, can be repurposed and will remain in service as part of the P25 network. Those other assets will be simply turned over to DGS for, again, decommissioning, because we will no longer have a need for them for public safety.
But existing assets that you are using are retained for state police and are not part of the contract that was negotiated by DGS?
The current contract that we're under is under the Crown Castle contract, and that is good until the end of December of 2020, next year. At which point the contract that the Secretary spoke to earlier will take over from that point. My understanding is that there's language being written in there to protect the public safety aspect of that, so that we would have the ability to maintain control over the critical infrastructure that we need to maintain and ensure public safety.
So you're saying it's being written. So is the contract executed? Has it been signed on the line? Because from Major Hoke's testimony, it doesn't sound like it has been. Have you seen the written language? Have you approved it? And is it part of a contract that's actually been signed?
Senator, I stand corrected. My understanding is that the contract has been validated. It is in place. Major Diane Stackhouse from our Bureau of Communication and Information Services has been involved with DGS, I believe, in the authoring of that.
But that doesn't answer the question. Has the state police seen the language?
I have not seen it
And
personally.
are those assets that are currently being used for first responders and public safety part of that contract? Yes or no?
I believe, my understanding, Senator, is that the contract will encompass all state assets. The Pennsylvania State Police maintain control of the StarNet network division, which is the radio assets across the Commonwealth, by virtue of a management directive. So we've been given the authority for the oversight and maintenance of that program.
Thank you, Major.